Well, okay, I've got 3 minutes after. Let's get this party rolling here. As people are still coming in. And as you notice, we're recording this today. So everybody should have had to push a little button in advance. This is my insurance because I was certain to forget if I did it after the fact. So please excuse me that you had to do that in advance as well. So, hi, Lois. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Very good. Good to see you.
You too.
All right. So for some of you who has everybody in here been to a prime hour before? Chris, maybe you haven't. Lois, you haven't. Okay. So the idea of the prime hour really is twofold: create community, get to know some other coaches, and we're growing. As you guys can see, there's more people coming on. We had several more sign up, so hopefully they'll show up. So it's to create community and get to know other coaches, but it's also we want to bring hot topics into the room for everybody. And of course, everybody's at different experience levels here. Most of you are already practicing. Some of you may just be starting out. But what we'll try to do is hone in on one or two things that we can really get into a good discussion about. And just to be clear, this isn't me teaching you. This is us teaching one another in this room, okay? So everybody's wisdom is invited and valued here. So I want to just start out by saying that. Instead of us going around the room and everybody doing I wanted to have a little more talking time today. Can I ask that everybody puts your name in the chat, where you're from, and if you want, what you're specializing in or what your niche is in coaching. And feel free to reach out to one another, private message one another in the chat if you want. Get to know one another. So if you want along the way. All right. And there's Neil's coming in. We'll give him a second. Hey, Neil.
Hey.
How are you? We're just getting started.
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. And I just told everybody, introduce yourself in the chat. Just give your name, where you're from, and if you're specializing in any particular area of coaching, put that down too. And I'm encouraging everybody to get to know one another, private message if you want to connect with somebody. So let's talk about hot topics here. This is what I will go around the room on and just ask all of you in your coaching, relative to skills, the competencies, execution of coaching, working with clients, what's your hot topic that you'd like to discuss? And anybody can just jump right in. Go ahead.
I have an ethical dilemma. I have a client whose boss wanted to reach out to me. The boss pays the bills because I'm an external coach for a health system, and I'm not opposed in principle. I had the conversation with the client. He's not opposed either. This is raising some ethical red flags for me, so I'd really appreciate maybe some dialogue about next steps, how to handle that.
Oh, I love ethics conversations. Okay.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah. Good.
Vince. I have not had the conversation with the boss yet, by the way. So yeah,
I figured it sounded like you're right smack in the middle of it.
Very timely. Yep.
Okay, good. Vince, go ahead.
So I think for me, in the midst of continuing to build my coaching practice, yesterday I just found out that I am approved by ICF to take my final test. So I'm happy about that because I have over 100 hours. So I think I want some input as to how to prepare for it.
Okay.
So
all right.
I did get the prep class that you guys offer. So
yeah,
that video.
Shameless plug. We have an exam prep, you guys.
And I can endorse it. Super helpful, fantastic videos, great practice exam. 40 questions or so. Really great.
Yeah,
Mary, not a paid commercial for Amy, but just saying.
The check's in the mail, Mayor. Eric took it too. So feel free to reach out to him too, Vince, while we're on here.
Yeah, no, that's good to know. Just because one of the things I've heard is you have to talk about what's the best response and what's the least response. So, and the tip I heard from somebody was, don't think of you as the coach, think of whoever this person is as the coach.
Okay. All right, I want to get everybody's stuff on the table, so we won't dive into that just yet. What else you guys got?
I'll just second the first two because dealing with the same things. And you're not going to learn from me on the practice test because I failed it the first time. So I'm all in.
Thank you, Joe, for saying that, because I will tell you, most people do when they
Learn
go
from failure.
just yeah.
I really want to pass the real test the first time though. So yeah.
That's why we get your jitters out that way. So. Who else? What else?
Amy, I have something that came out of one of the podcasts, the one about brief and streamlining communication. But if Ilias is not here today, I'm glad to save it for another time.
You can, because he did it, and but most of those topics we discuss.
Yeah, the 7 C's in communication, and he made a really interesting point, and I made note of it, and I'm like, how do you do that? So
good. Get him when he's in here next time with that.
We'll do. I'll save
that
it.
one on the shelf for now. All right. Any other hot topics?
I guess I will throw out there that I'd love to get some advice and guidance from the room on what types of things you do as we get closer to the end of the year. If your business tends to be a little bit seasonal, if you slow down a little bit, like what kinds of things do you do to prepare for increasing your business in the coming year?
Okay, that's good. Okay, last chance. Okay, so we've got ethics, ICF test prep, and prepping for coming into the new year, and getting your business in order to get new business in 2025. Neil.
I would just add one quick thing, and this would be something that it would be nice to have in the chat. I have a client who came to me wanting to, in one session, solve their social anxiety. And there are certain things I haven't been specifically trained on, but I find myself very motivated to learn more, and I'm looking for resources. So anything that anyone can point me to, I'd be grateful.
Okay. All right. I don't know that we'll bring that one into the room.
No, just in the chat.
Yeah, resources you're looking for relative to that. Okay. All right. So I'd like to jump in on Ed's ethical dilemma first. Because these are juicy conversations. And the thing is, as Ed, you're probably experiencing right now, is when you get in them, you don't often have this opportunity to come and talk about it. You got to make decisions on the fly. And it's one of the things that make ethics so difficult. So is everybody okay that we start there with the ethical? Okay. All right, Ed, what would you like to tell us about this situation?
I'll try to be as brief as possible. I'm an external coach for a large health system in the United States. I was approached by the OD person initially a couple of years back. She test drove me with one of their chiefs who was having troubles. We had a very good outcome. So based on that, I think it was sort of that reputational thing. She started to refer. I've had like 9 referrals from her. And they're comprehensive coaching packages with leadership assessment tools and a long arc between 6 and 12 months. So these are very serious. They're vice president level physicians who have gone from subject matter experts now to leading departments of 8, sometimes 9 figures. So they have a lot of responsibility, a lot of accountability. This particular client is the president of their integrated network. He came from a smaller component of their system into a bigger one. He's having a lot of troubles adjusting into the bigger system. He had tremendous success in the small system. It's a very relational organization. He has challenges with relationship skills. It's quite clear that when working through those things, he knows this in his intellect. It's probably his biggest Achilles heel. They put him on an interim category, and his boss is the one who basically navigated and negotiated the interim category, even though this person's indicated as a president. This is one of their 5 strategic pillars, so he's got a lot on his plate. Apparently his boss reached out to the OD person with whom I have a very strong relationship, and she gets coaching. We have a lot of conversations about the coaching mindset and where we would apply it. And we don't talk about clients. We've agreed. We have the ethical arrangement there is solid. She gets it. I get it. We just talk about, the completion of the arc, and then she then submits the invoice to the various departments. They pay them, and that's all we do. In this one, the boss wants to see, he's, I think, underwriting the coaching eventually, because he controls the finances of all this. And he wants to see change is what she's basically telling me. And I thought, oh man. So we talked a lot about this very question. I said, I will say I'll call her Jane. That's close to her first name. Jane and I basically talked through this. I said, well, there's a kind of an ethical dilemma here, Jane. I mean, I'm not opposed to talking to anybody, as you know. But I think, so we agreed that we would approach the candidate, the client, and say, well, this outreach has occurred, because at some point it's going to come back to him that it has happened. And either Ed said no or Ed said yes. So we agreed that we at least would talk to the client and say, your boss is reaching out. What do you think? And he was like, oh, go for it. So I was a little surprised. But now I'm in this. So I went back to the OD person and said, the client has said, it's okay to go for it. What we're at now is you may signal to the boss that he may reach out to me. He hasn't reached out. And I'm wondering if this is just just say yes and see what they do kind of thing, which is, feels a little bit like a parent challenging a kid to really, I dare you to do it kind of thing. So I'm in this middle of this piece. This is where we are right now. I really would appreciate some feedback, because I am in it, and I'm not certain that I've done. The absolutist in me would have said, no, absolutely not. And I'm not certain what I would have been setting up in the relationship between the boss and the client if I were to absolutely refuse, which I'm not interested in doing either. So I'm sensitive to both ways.
Yeah. Quick question, just
Yes.
a clarifying question. How long has it been since you said yes and he has not reached out?
It's been short. It's been less than 2 weeks. So we had this conversation not last week, but the week before.
Okay. All right. So I wanted, this is not unusual.
It's pretty real. It's the first time I've actually encountered it, which is, I'm surprised, because I'm probably 25 plus clients in and 6 teams. And thus far I've been able to sort of navigate we don't talk about the clients kind of stuff, but I have strong relationships with the sponsor. And it turns out the OD person is kind of the conduit, but not necessarily the departmental sponsor. And that may be the gap there.
Yeah. Oh, this is good, Ed, because anybody doing organizational work in here, you're going to run into this. This is going to happen.
I dropped my right earbud. It's under my desk, so I'm not walking away. I'm just going to retrieve it.
We'll see in a second.
Yep.
The Ed puppet. So, all right, I'm going to turn out to you guys. What do you think is first and foremost consideration here? Yes, Cindy. And then Gregory. We can't hear you. You're on mute. All right, I'm going to go to Gregory while you figure out how to unmute. Go ahead, Gregory.
Foremost, I just think about maintaining confidentiality with the client. That's the first thing.
Yeah, that's front and center. I'm sure with that it sounds like too. Yeah. What's the next consideration?
I would think about contracting, like what has been said to the various parties about what can and can't be communicated.
Bang on, Lois. Ed, what's the agreement here?
Nothing in writing other than the arc and timing. But this hadn't presented itself before in any other department. So thank you. That's likely some homework I have to do.
Amy, I have a question, more provocative, I guess, is that I agree with what Gregory said, that, we coach the individual and confidentiality is on our ethics board. But who's the client? And I'm asking that provocatively. Doesn't Ed have a double client? And is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, Ed, who do you see as the client?
The health system. Well, let me put it this way. I am an external coach in a relationship with the health system. The ultimate client is the individual. So my mindset is it's the individual, and I am aware I am in a relationship with the health system.
Mm-hmm.
That's the dilemma for me in this, and thus far the relationship has gone well, and we've established, to Lois's intent, I think, a through our conversations through the OD department, lots of clarity about what's expected, and that we did put in the statement of work initially. So that does exist with the health system. So this does kind of challenge that in some respects.
Okay. And is there anything in that about triangulated relationships?
No, I guess that was what I was responding to in the inquiry.
Okay.
From a detail perspective, no.
Yeah. But does anybody have any questions for Ed that they want to ask? Vince, go ahead.
I just was kind of wondering, like, do we know what his reasoning, like, do we know why he wants to be involved or why he wants to know more? Do you know what I mean? Because I know we don't usually ask why questions, but I'm just curious as to why.
Yeah.
Like, does he just want to know so he has a stake in what's going on? I guess I'm trying to, and that would lead to other questions after that, I'm sure.
Great question. When I talked with, what did I call her? Judy, I guess I did. Or,
Jane.
Jane, yeah, thank you. I said, what happens if I end up coaching Ralph? Now, that's not his name, but, that could very well happen that maybe he needs a little coaching. But and the other thing that the client and I talked about was his response was, well, maybe the three of us ought to get together to coach through our relationship. I said, well, then if we do that, then we are deliberate about that, and I'm open to that. There is animosity, at least from the client's perspective, between these two. They have common vision and then potato on how to get there, and at least from the client's perspective. My belief is that his boss wants to see the behavior, something change in this client's behavior. And that's my belief. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm kind of reading between the lines from what the OD person told me as well. So, yeah.
Almost like outcomes based. I thought we're kind of trying to, like, sometimes I remember in our training, we talked about, like, hey, I want you to increase our retention by 10%. Is like, we don't do that kind of, you know what I mean? That's not what we're on board for.
I appreciate that. I have every utmost confidence this client will drive all that stuff. And in fact, I think his drive to do that is likely challenging the very relationship-based organization, because he sees a lot of moving parts. Quite capable in his job, very capable in his job. And I have my risk is I have a lot of inside knowledge because he's doing what I used to do. So in fact, I know his boss from past life. So this is also, I should maybe bring that into the dialogue. So it's a small world when you get into this rarefied air of these kinds of things, because we've all met each other at various conferences. I did not know this client at all. We established that I don't have those kinds of conflicts with direct clients. But I know his boss from a very remote past life. I know his competency. I'm not worried. The deliverables, that's not what we're talking about. We really are talking about behavior. We're talking about his values, how he conducts himself, the shadow he casts, all those things. He is very aware of these things. And it may very well be that the client gives me permission to have a conversation with the two of them so they can maybe realize that their pronunciation of the root vegetable is actually the same here. They really are saying either potato, potato, or potato, potato, whichever one you want, but they just don't know it. So that would be my optimism in this. And I have to guard against my optimism, because that could then be a trap to get into something that then stirs up things I don't intend. So
Like, you don't want to be the intermediary between them.
absolutely not. I'm not interested in being a shuttle diplomat between the two of them.
Does anybody else have anything
Yeah.
you want to put on this
These are
situation?
great. I love the contracting question, Lois. I think that's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, this is more logistical. Is there something time bound about this coaching engagement that's why this person is raising the question now and looking for either results or behavior change? Is there something in their mind with, oh, this is supposed to be completed by this point? You know, people get all different unrealistic expectations.
No, that's a great question, Mary. I could speculate that it's a I want change fast thing. This is one of the key strategic pillars. It is very transformational. We and the client happen to know this is going to take a long time. We talked about what, a rung on the or step on the stair step the current leadership team is to get to that spot in our last coaching session, and recognized there were lots of incremental steps. So there's likely a short-term expectation on the part of his boss. While I don't know how much understanding there is of how long it takes organizational transformation to happen and how much leadership is involved in doing all of that. So this is the part that I have a curiosity. It's like, ooh, what's really going on here? And the intent really is success on everybody's part. But so there's a lot of unknowns in all of this. So my curiosity is intensely piqued in all of this. But I have to be cautious about that, just Ed's curiosity, and make sure that it's in service to the client. And there are really three client now, well, two to start out with, the individual and the organization, is a third one becoming present in all of this, and that I don't know yet.
Eric.
I'm just going to add this. I don't know if I'm completely off base here, but I always think about these things from my negotiation lens, and thinking about addressing the boss's self-interest and what is it that they're hoping that coaching leads to, and reminding them that by being involved, or even the propensity or the thought that anyone other than the coachee would be involved in their coaching is going to have a negative effect on what their actual interests are in having you there. So the more that there's any thought on the coachee's point, and from the coachee standpoint, that anybody's listening from anywhere else in the company, that they would be more reluctant to move forward, provide information, to do the things that are actually going to drive the company in a positive way.
I totally agree with you, Eric. And this is my dilemma: is my interest is in the success of this particular client, and what I'm uncertain about is, am I setting something in motion that does exactly that, undermines the success? And I don't know. I will say the OD person has went through Elias's course, and I'm not sure if she ever took the ACC exam, but she went through the full Coach U training, so she does understand coaching. And her comment to me was that Ralph doesn't understand coaching, and that was her gestalt based on her understanding of what his needs are, and that was very helpful sort of advice, if you will, to me. And oh, okay, thank you. I appreciate that. So maybe to answer, was it Vince's question about what does he want? My suspicion is that he wants change, and to Mary's question, he probably wants it yesterday, knowing how much work they have to do to transform the organization. So come on, Ed, fix this guy. And that the client has to fix himself if there's anything to be fixed. He has to actually truly understand himself. He's actually not broken. He's just different, and he's got a style. And I'm not certain that the Ralph doesn't want him to have a different style. And that's Ralph's issue, frankly, from my perspective. But I want to be deferential to this client's success.
Yeah. So what's really going on?
Cindy's finally off mute.
Oh, Cindy, here you are. Go ahead, jump in.
Thank you for your patience. Good to see you again, Ed.
Thank you.
A lot of people have made some of the comments I would have hit on, but my question would be, talking to the guy who kind of pays, right? You say that he really doesn't know about coaching. So maybe having a conversation with him around that. I don't know if you feel comfortable with that, and maybe doing a mini coaching session with him just to offer, see if he might be interested in it, and just kind of talk about what coaching really is and how it could benefit the company overall, which is separate from what their values, their goals, their expectations are.
Jane and I had that conversation. Thank you. That might be the most, that's helpful to get that suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. We actually had that conversation.
Thanks, Cindy. Gregory.
Just add to that, because Ed, I faced this. I'm sure a lot of people on this call have faced this before, but in the contracting, what I've done that's helped me is I talk about giving a process update to the sponsor or to the HR OD person. And I'm really clear about what a process update is. And it's a little boring, but it's like, we've had this many sessions. I do talk about how the person shows up and how they're engaged. And towards the end of a coaching engagement, I typically have another meeting with the sponsor, the HR rep. And in that meeting, or I should say prior to that meeting, when I'm meeting with the client, I remind them that our conversation is confidential. I'm going to be talking to Ralph, whatever. If Ralph asks some specific questions, are there some things that you would like me to share? And sometimes we've talked about those, or I've even written a bullets, high level, and I've sent them to the client and said, how do you feel if it comes up if I share these things? Anyways, that's helped me in the situations when it's come up. So
thank you. Yeah, I like that.
Amy. Thanks, Gregory.
I'm really late to the conversation. I apologize. So I'm coming in on the tail end, but based on Gregory, what you just said, another thing that I've learned is at the beginning of a coaching engagement, I will also ask the person I'm coaching to be thinking about what they will share with the people who are investing in it, about what their takeaways are, what the value is, what they're implementing. And that sets the stage with them and with the person paying, because sometimes they'll say, well, what are they learning? And I'll say, have you asked them? Right? Ask them, check in with them. And then that also helps them self-advocate and them share, because at the end of every coaching session, they've got homework, there's things they're doing. So that gives them a chance also to get that face time and that visibility, and that may be an option too.
Getting some good stuff here, Ed?
Oh, extremely helpful. Thank you. I was anticipating some positive things, but I'm blown away. Thank you, group. Very helpful.
And I hope everybody else is gleaning something from all this, because let me tell you, this only happens to you once before you decide I've got to put some other things in place.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, how did you know?
Because I've been there, Ed, and they're done that.
Thank you.
So this inevitably happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's always a stakeholder that jumps in that's going to want to know more, whatever, outside of whoever set up the coaching arrangement. And I will tell you over the years, my policy, and in my agreement with the organization is that I will not have conversations with a third party once I begin with a client without the client present. And my reasoning for that with the organization when I discuss expectations with them is that they're just throwing good money after bad. If I work to develop trust with this person and we get into some good stuff, and then I just go down and talk to somebody else and they have no idea what I'm saying. And so the trust gets, even if people are fine with it, they're human. They're going to be going, well, what's that saying? He's having that meeting this morning with my boss. Okay. So there, it's from my vantage point, I say, even if they say they're fine with it, they're still going to wonder. And so in my agreement, it is that once I begin with the client, there will be no more third-party one-on-ones with me, period. And I tell them it's in their own best interest for that. The other thing, Ed, is what I heard in this situation too, is you saying, I don't know what he wants. He wants change. That's all you said. I don't know what the guy wants. Well, I'm kind of guessing he wants Ed to do his dirty work. Why isn't he talking to your client? Right?
Highly suspicious that's the case, given my understanding of the culture of the organization.
Yeah. And not only doing his dirty work, but you're also doing it in this ambiguous swirl of trying to guess what he wants. I'm wondering how your client might feel about that too, right? He wants something, but not quite sure what. So you're working in the dark, and to have the one-on-one with his boss without him present, now you have to translate that.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that's really helpful.
And to Amy's point, pushing that triangulated relationship together gets them talking. Right? Says to the boss, no, I won't do your dirty work, but I'll help you facilitate a conversation here. And I've facilitated many of those conversations. And let me tell you, they are valuable, very valuable. And, you know, how many people have ever worked for a boss that's conflict avoidant? Everybody's hands, I'm sure. And we know a lot of people will perceive these conversations as automatic conflict, or it feels like conflict to them. A coach can really help smooth all that out, right? This doesn't have to be, let's make it a learning experience for all of us here, you know, and you can facilitate that in those conversations. And so agreement, number one, right? Expectations, number two, to be able to talk about what are their expectations? How will we handle these triangulated situations, right? The assurance to the client that you won't be having conversations behind their back. And you're not translating what somebody else's meaning is to the client, which is really hard. So this is really important, you guys, because, you know, when you were asked, Ed, who's the client, you hesitated. You started with the company, but said ultimately the client. It is always the client. It is always the client. And when I work with organizations, I'll even, when we talk about expectations, say, listen, the coaching might result in them exiting the organization. And yes, I'll do you that favor. If you have a half-committed person, I will help them move towards something that works better for them, because I will be serving this person and the organization at the same time if that happens. So, and I'll tell you, I've hit the one I did when I learned to get this clean is I had a CEO in my face tell me, what the hell are we paying you for if you won't tell me this? In my face. So, and I learned real quick, Ed, get this. stuff sorted out in the agreement. So it's
Ralph won't do that. He'll go talk to somebody else
go
about
talk
that,
to
though.
someone else. Yeah.
Yeah. If I
Yeah.
understand. Yeah.
So, and I'm saying all this, you guys, because
Thank you.
gets fuzzy when you get into the organization. You're getting high fees. You've got a close sponsor there, somebody you've got the relationship who understands, right, what coaching is and everything. Don't bank on it. Don't bank on her being there next week, right? Somebody else go. You know how that stuff works. So it's about clear agreements here, really clear agreements.
Yeah, we don't have that. We don't have that clarity. Thank you.
Anyone else want to jump in on any of that? I see some people going like this. It's these ethical situations are tough, and unfortunately we learn about them in the moment. The other thing I want to make all of you aware of is that the ICF actually has an ethics hotline. That and if you're a member of the ICF, you're eligible to use that at any time. And so it's a great service when you face situations like these. Yeah, Claire. And then
I joined a sort of management group. There was the group of managers being coached, and I joined the program part of the way through. And I came to understand that there was a lot being discussed with the senior management team that actually shouldn't have been, because and it really just and I, although I was slightly apart from the group, it wasn't good at all. So I've sort of kind of been at the receiving end, and it's reassuring to have this clarity, because that's been my understanding, but I don't really have a great deal of experience in this area. I don't tend to work with organizations, but thank you. It's great to have that reassurance and that clarity. Thank you.
Oh, good. I'm glad that did that for you. Yeah, and organizations will want to tell you how you should conduct your business. And it takes a little pulling yourself up by your bootstraps sometimes, especially when you're just starting out, to say, no, that's not how I work. Instead, this is how I work, and here's why. We are always educating our clients and our client companies on how we work and how they can use us best. And confidentiality absolutely works in their favor. So don't be afraid to assert that as you're setting up some of these relationships.
Yeah.
Boy, the time is flying fast. Cindy.
So I just wanted to note that I don't work in the corporate world. However, everything that we talked about today can go into other forms of coaching. So it could be maybe spouses, both are going to be coached. Maybe a parent is paying for a teen. Yep. So other situations that are very similar to this that could come into play. So a lot of great information was shared that we can kind of overlap.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Cindy. And that's absolutely, this applies across the board, inside and outside of organizations. I wanted to go back to Gregory in doing the update reports. I just want to add one thing, Gregory, that I do in my practice is usually I'll either be given a development plan or I'll co-create a development plan based on these triangulated meetings. But the updates, and I think this has really served me well, the updates I co-create with the client instead of me doing them, right? Back to Amy's point, that gets them used to being able to articulate their own progress, how they're growing, and reflect on their own efforts and how what's paying off, what isn't, and to be able to transfer that information. So again, going back to remember the 3 golden rules of coaching: the client does the work, the client does the work, the client does the work. But this time with a reason too on this, as well, because it permeates in a lot of different ways. So, Amy.
And unmute. What I really, really love about what you just said, and I remember you saying this during our coaching coursework, Amy, but enabling them to self-advocate and to shine, in my opinion, has served really, really well, because even if it's because there's some perceived performance gaps or whatever it might be, the fact that the company or somebody is investing in that person to have a coach shows their value and shows the investment. And I constantly reiterate, like, this is such a gift. And so you want to give them a chance to highlight and benefit from that. And I think anytime that they can be self-advocating, that they can be highlighting, that they can be doing that, it also subtly reinforces the value of coaching and reinforces the value to that person and to their ultimate goals. So I just love, love, love the way you just said that.
Well, I love the way you just said that. Good. Anything else anybody wants to put in the room around this? Yeah, Vince.
The other thing that I just heard that I liked is it gives them the headspace, because it can be easy in a coaching situation to think it's just that person, that they don't realize what they're doing has impacts on other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Ed, you ready for this? Ready to handle this thing?
Yes, and quite grateful. Yeah, no, very, 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 very helpful to frame out if you will, a tactic. And I really appreciate the I mean, I was fearful of this sort of shuttle diplomacy kind of role, and that if I've taken one, well, there's several things I've taken away, but that's one that's quite critical is how do I not get myself in that, and the clarity around either doing this together or not doing it at all. I mean, that's clearly one of the options, is quite clear. And thank you for that sort of grounding comment about the client is the client. I am aware of the relationship with the health system, and we have Jane and I have talked about that quite consistently. But your observation of my hesitance was maybe my head getting in the way of my
easy to do.
my gut instinct, which was your response. So thank you.
Yeah, no, it's easy for all of us to do, right? You get in there and there's all this stuff going on. So
we are likely to be recontracting this relationship quite soon. Yeah. Good. I hope everybody else got a lot out of that. Thank you everyone for your input on this. Very helpful. I really appreciate it.
And thanks for bringing it into the room, Ed, because that stuff's solid gold when coaches get. And listen, I've had these ethics conversations with a room full of MCCs, and I'll tell you, they're some of the richest learning experiences I've had ever in my coach education. So, so great. Yeah. So we also had, somebody wanted to know about prepping for the ICF test. What do you want to talk about there?
I don't know, just I think really my thoughts were kind of how to prepare for it, but like any tips or tricks. Now that might be covered in what you and Elias put together. You know what I mean? I want to prepare in having the right headspace going into it.
Okay.
As how to approach it.
Yeah. We have a program, but there's two people I know about that took this thing, and let's see, it's always about the client. Yes, Amy, it's always about the client in the desk. So take advantage of Mary and Eric who went through. Mary went through and took the exam. Eric, you haven't taken the exam yet, but you did the prep. So, and Claire has her hands up. Claire, did you have a question?
I haven't taken the new test. I took the old coach knowledge assessment, and I say this with sincerity: is read the question.
Yeah,
read the question, and don't make assumptions. Take your time. There is, and I don't believe this will change. There is sufficient time.
Yeah. Amy, sorry.
Yeah, I would agree, read the question and reread the question. You can actually flag them if you want to go back and visit them. So you can answer and then you can flag and go back. I called Amy literally from the car after I took the exam and passed. And just to give you a little bit of context, I was day 6 post-COVID, so I was okay to be out, but I was feeling miserable. I mean, I sobbed because it was but here's what I realized. Amy, Rupert Donovan, was in my head as I read every question. And the fact that it's all about the client. So in my opinion, humble opinion, I took it a year ago. You're selecting the best answer and the worst answer. And my experience was it was always easy to figure out the best answer. Where I had to really focus is how do you figure out the worst of the worst? Because the other ones are all bad. And the reason the way that I did that and passed is because it was all about the client. Anytime the question is worded that the coach is telling them what to do, or the coach thinks this, or it's not about you. And so I think if you can really at the core remember that when you're thinking about what's the worst answer, which is equally as important to know, that will serve you well. And take Amy with you in your head, because I'm telling you, Amy in your head adds value. That's my opinion anyway.
That could help or that could hurt. Thanks, Amy. Yeah,
I'll add one other tip, Amy, if that's okay. Amy and Amy, when it comes to the worst answer, because apparently there's data that says many of us have trouble with identifying what the worst answers. We get more of those wrong than we get the best answers wrong. I had a wonderful coaching session with a mentor coach, and I took her through 6 or 7 questions that I got wrong with the worst answer. And so I told her about my thinking, and I took her through, and it's like, this is how I looked at this. She gave me this wonderful strategy of just thinking about the worst answer on a continuum. It's like, you select your worst answer. Now go back to those other answers and say, is there something worse than that? And thinking about the 8 competencies, is there something worse than that? Like, ask yourself that question. And when I retook a practice exam and I did that, I got so many more right with the worst answers. It was a wonderful, Rashonda just looked right through that to me, and she just helped me to just shift my head about it. It was really great.
That's a great tip. That's really good. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Mary. Yeah. The test, it's a judgment-based test versus a knowledge-based. They don't want to know what you've memorized. They want to know what you know. And what I think where a lot of people get tripped up on is they start to take the exam going, what is it they want me to say here? And you're done the minute you start thinking that way. So back to Amy's point, it's always about the client. Think about the dynamic between, with what's going on in the conversation or in the situation that's been presented relative to the client. Because that's what, that's what the exam is designed for, is for you to be able in the moment to make a judgment call on what's happening and apply the appropriate skill, action, whatever it is. Neil.
I just had a quick question around, is this test something that I should take while my knowledge from training with you, Amy, is fresh, or after I have my 100 hours in? And
well, you don't have an option with the ICF. You have to have your 100 hours. Yeah. But have you done our exam yet? It's part of the program that Neil was in our level 1 program. Did you take the exam part of the program yet?
No.
Okay. Do that. That will get you well prepared.
Okay.
And yeah. Good. Eric.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback on that because I haven't taken the test yet, but the test prep course, having done that, I can't imagine what it's like taking that test without doing that first. I can't even imagine just the amount of that I learned from a structural standpoint of not only how the test is conducted and how to prepare and the logistical things that cause us anxiety and that sort of thing. But to go through the test, which I failed the first time, and then and then sit down with Amy and go through those questions to really go through what a lot of people have said about the worst answer being the one that's a little bit more challenging. The second time around, I went into taking the test with a whole different level of confidence and understanding. And like I said, I don't know how people go into that blind, because it was such a strange way, fascinating, but strange way to conduct a test of 4 options, choose the best, choose the worst.
Yeah, it is odd. I will give you that. But when I wrote our test, I will tell you, as I'm writing it, I'm going, this really does stretch you into being able to apply what you know. And so it's that best and worst. And I've never seen that approach before in relative to coaching exams and that sort of thing. So it is very effective to find out what somebody knows. I'll tell you that, but it's a little grueling to go through. So it's yeah. Any other questions anybody's got for it, even if you're not ready or you're even a long way off?
Amy asked a question in the chat.
Oh, sorry. Terrible multitasker.
I just can't, I don't unmute fast enough. Can you validate, is it that we will retake the exact same test for PCC?
Right now, yes, but they're wanting to separate now. So I understand it's in the works, and that could mean next month or next decade. We don't know.
But either way, there is another testing element at the PCC.
It's being talked about, yeah. It's yeah.
Had the same question, Amy.
Yeah, and from what I understand, the ACC level exam will be more knowledge-based, possibly, than judgment-based. Which does not excite me. That's how good of a memorizer are you, basically? Which we all love those exams, don't we?
Yeah.
Bring it back to sweating it out in college. Yeah.
I was just going to add to Amy's question. If you get if you just took your ACC and you get all your hours for PCC within a year, then you don't have to retake it. But if you don't get them until after a year, then you have to retake it.
I didn't even know that, Lois.
Really?
Thank you. That's a gem. Until they come out with that new test. Yeah. Get your hours fast, you guys.
And now we're back to whoever asked the third question around how do we build our business?
Build our business. I know. Eric, we're shortchanging you here because we've only got like 5 minutes left. Anybody want to throw anything in on that? But while we have a couple minutes left. How do you
Eric, could you kind of repeat the context for the question? Could you, because I thought I heard something, but now it's talking more about building business. So I'm curious if you could repeat it.
Yeah, I think it is somewhat around building business and building just what if there's any cyclical nature or seasonality to your coaching business as we get toward the end of the year, what kinds of things do you recommend doing to start, to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success in 2025 as a coach, as a business owner, or as a coach?
Everybody's like, I've never thought of it that way.
I'll jump in. Not to monopolize this. I love December, and I have most of the month off. So I might work a few days the first week, and so I have all this time, and I keep it open for the following reason. I close out the year, so I tackle any administrative, and that's just billing and invoicing and things like that, but just any administrative, close out files, clean up, get all that organized. I also build and prepare for what's going to come in January. you know, whatever new files for new clients or things for my students at Kellogg. So I get all that organized. The second thing I do is I create my own goals, what I want to do for 2025, whatever that new year is. And they're both personally and professional. And there's usually a list of 10 things, you know, across both categories. And so I have a document and kind of keep a look at it throughout the course of the year. But I know what I'm working against with some intention, just about how I want to live life, how I want to do my work. And then I also I also do a little bit of reflection and evaluating what's going well with my work. Where do I want to make some adjustments, if at all? If I'm, you know, if there's an audience I'm serving, I want to do more of it, or if there's something I'm doing that's getting stale and want to figure that out. And then finally, I just have a lot of fun the month of December with holiday things and taking a big trip to London. So Claire, I'm headed your way this year, but I take advantage of it to just really maximize the recharging, the real enjoyment, celebrating all the work that went into the year and being comfortable with, oh, I'm not making any income this month. I'll make more in January. I made some in October and November, and just really taking advantage of the time. That's what I do. And FaceTime a lot with all my family all over the country.
I'm with you, Mary. There's times we need to step away from the desk for a little while and just replenish ourselves. That's my time of the year to do that too. So it's the new year comes fast enough, button up what I need to on the previous year, and then take that time to just clear myself so that I can move into the new year. So, all right, everyone. Hey, it's the top of the hour here. This has been a great discussion. Thank you all for jumping in and bringing all your great stuff in here. I hope to see all of you next month. We'll be sending out the announcements again. And there will be a recording announced on LinkedIn of this conversation. So we'll be bringing this this conversation to more than just us. And hopefully some of you connected here today too. And so, all right. Well, hopefully everybody has a wonderful month, and we will see all of you next month, hopefully.
Cheers.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Amy.